Hello, creatives. Welcome back to Girl Gang Craft, the podcast. Today, we have Janet Mesh on the podcast. Hello, Janet. How's it going?
Hey Phoebe, doing well, thank you. Excited to talk today with your audience.
Yay. Thank you so much for being here. So, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Janet. Nice to meet you all. I'm the CEO co-founder of Aimtal. We're a integrated marketing agency. We're also a fully remote company. So it's a little bit of the style to that too. So we actually work with, in the business to business technology space. So some kind of like mid-sized to large enterprise organizations. Um, and yeah, we offer like a range of services across marketing. And we actually just celebrated 5 years of the agency in August of 2018, which is really exciting.
Congrats.
Excited to I think that's a good starting point, I think, but we'll probably get into more.
Yeah. So, I would love to hear a little bit about how you got into your work, about how you
hmm
decided to start your own agency.
Yeah, so I went to school for marketing, so I've always worked in marketing. Well, not always. Well, I my first role out of graduating college now feels like a century ago. But was in marketing. I was like a marketing admin, worked my way up to become a marketing manager at a IT staffing and recruiting company. And I was there for several years. I actually met my co-founder. We were working at like similar companies. They were like owned by the same kind of investment company, and we're on the same floor. So meet people in like the kitchen, water cooler moments. And yeah, I learned a lot. And then they were acquired. It was kind of a good time for me to like one move on and two have a quarter life crisis. So instead of going right into like a new job, I actually took like time off, traveled in South America for 4 months, and really like decided like what do I want to do in my career. And I really want to continue going deeper into digital marketing. My background, like my specialty is like content marketing, copywriting, and like in social media. So everything was just starting to like skyrocket in that direction, and digital marketing actually becoming like a serious like discipline within marketing, which is super exciting. So I'm based here in Boston, Massachusetts, actually. So I came back after traveling to Boston. And part of it too, I wanted to be able to like work fully remote. And that was not 100% of like, now it's like a norm. Like there's more opportunity to work remotely. But back in 2017, like this is probably like 2016 now. Um, that was not a thing. So I figured, I was like, well, I want to get a range of experience. So I decided to work with a couple of different agencies. So really getting like just like learning everything as much as I possibly could, getting a lot of experience in like account management, client services. And pre-pandemic, obviously, Boston had like a lot of good like marketing, networking, women in business kind of groups and events. So met a lot of people through that, and that kind of also simultaneously led to me getting my own clients and doing my own freelancing and like kind of my direct clients, which was really exciting. So that that actually was kind of the catalyst of everything kind of coming to a head in 2018. And probably, I think a lot of entrepreneurs probably feel this, where you're like, okay, there's like this is something, especially if you're service-based business, and just getting a lot of clients, which was amazing, and was kind of at this point where like I need some help. I can't do this on my own. And My co-founder and I, he always wanted to start a business, but we didn't 100% know what it would be. But we wanted to start like a fully remote company, have that flexibility. So we decided the first business would be an agency. So we decided to create Aimtal in 2018. Started off with like a couple contractors, people in my network that I've known and worked with historically. And then within like 2 years, we were able to offer like full-time employment, kind of all those, fun, exciting benefits and experience of being a full-time employee of an agency. And now, yeah, 5 years later, we're at almost like 20 people in the company, with still like working with some handful of contractors as well that help with like project-based work. So yeah,
That's huge.
definitely. Yeah, thank you. So kind of, I feel like it's somewhat of a linear path, but it also just went in a lot of different directions. And I don't know if I 100% kind of think any entrepreneur listening, you don't always know exactly what you're getting into, but I'm glad that I did it, honestly. I don't regret it at all.
So, okay, tell us a little bit about the kinds of companies that you work with.
Yeah, so we work with we're in the business to business space, so it's like businesses marketing to businesses. That's like our specialization. Most of our clients have like a product or a platform. Um I would say like some of our most notable clients that people may have heard of. It's with one of them is called Atlassian, and one of their products is called Trello. So we've been doing like Trello's content and social media marketing for years now. They were actually one of my like first like kind of consulting freelance clients. It definitely gave me the confidence to be like I can do this, which was really huge. So that's I think if you kind of think of like the Trellos of the world, those types of tools, that's kind of where we specialize in helping to build a client's like kind of we go in and really help out with like the strategy, and then help execute upon that, like their marketing strategy, and then execute upon that. So they very much either have like a product or a platform that we help market to like their audiences. But it's also kind of cool because a lot of it's not just only on the product or platform where things have evolved, which is really exciting. And we've helped with is like a lot around like the content or like, like articles, like blog articles, resources like that. I feel like sometimes that in itself is like a product, and that's a lot we've done well with our clients, creating like video content and that educational content that their audience is looking for and help them solve problems.
So, I guess let's bring it back to a little bit about our audience and what they
Hmm.
can learn from you and like content marketing. Um, so let's start with that. What is content marketing and why is it important?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I think that's what's like obviously we work like in our with Aimtal, we work with like larger organizations, but I think a lot of the best practices are the same. And at the end of the day, it's like any audience is like that's kind of what it's distilling it down to is like you're helping them solve some sort of pain point or challenge, or you're helping to like help them discover like a solution. And I think that like at its core is the driver of like content marketing. It's like what can we create for our audience to, help them in their job, help them in their career, help in any way. Um, and that's where then you kind of like layer that in the types of content. So of course, I kind of think of content across like any channel. So it can be anything from like written format to video, audio, of course. And then depending on the channel in terms of like social media versus like email, on your website. So that's how kind of like if you're I always kind of think like strategy first, like audience first, and really like I think you can kind of get I think any like entrepreneur or anyone within an organization, you can kind of get like shiny object syndrome where you want to like kind of create everything. I know I'm like that. I'm like, let's do all the things. But really wanting like always starting with the audience first of like what does your audience actually want for the content, like what are they consuming, where are they right now, like where are they showing up, um and is it actually on Instagram or is it on YouTube, and kind of focusing in there first. That's how we like kind of always look at it and advise too of like creating content can be in any type of form, but we really want to invest in is like creating what your audience is like either like looking for or currently consuming, and not kind of doing like when we say like integrated approach to marketing, we're not saying like you got to do all the things. It's actually more of like what can you create, like say for example, I mean I feel like you do this well. It's a really good example. Like you have the podcast, you do the video, and then you're able to like take that content across channels. So you're having like that you can consider this is content and then across channels, and that's where you're pretty much hitting where anyone kind of consumes it. I hope I answered the question. I know it's kind of like
No, it's totally great. So, I guess how do you figure out where your audience is? I mean, I think a lot of our community immediately goes to Instagram.
Mhm.
Um, but maybe that's not always the right choice for people. So, like, how do you figure out what platforms to focus on?
Yeah, that's a really good question. There's actually like a new tool that we use. It's called Spark Toro. It came on like the past like couple of years. And you can actually like put in like a website, or you can put in like a social handle of like maybe like your competitor. 'Cause that's kind of a fun thing to do. Like see if you had a competitor or someone else that you're like interested in. Maybe you want to kind of tap into a similar audience that they have. there's a tool called SparkTor, and you can put that like the link in there, and then they actually pull for you like where like your audience is like consuming other content, like other types of like podcasts or like YouTube channels, other social media channels that they follow. So that's like I think is like a that's a cool that's one that we use as like like a real example of like an actual tool you could take away and start using. They have like a free version you can get started on. Um and I think that's kind of like in the technical side, but I think it's just kind of even thinking through of like seeing we also kind of look at like if you have a competitor in the space or someone who's doing something similar to kind of take a look at like where they're promoting their content or like doing their marketing, like if they're specializing on maybe like one or two social media channels. Like for our industry and like the types of companies we work with, it will be LinkedIn of course is like the most popular social media platform, but actually Instagram is also one of them. On Instagram's actually like does really well in our for our clients, and I think overall like it's definitely like a power channel for Aimtal. And for us actually it works really well kind of on like the recruiting culture side, which is cool. Maybe not necessarily like the services side. So yeah, I think kind of like layering in like that data with more just like that empathetic approach of like where's my audience, kind of trying to like step into their shoes and see maybe where they are online, um and seeing kind of what other people in the industry are doing or where they're kind of like targeting as well.
But that's so cool. I kind of want to hear a little bit more about like implementing a LinkedIn strategy.
Sure.
Because I think that's a little bit foreign to a lot of listeners who are specifically in the like artsy crafts small business world. I think probably
Hmm.
people listening who have maybe 9 to 5s are maybe more familiar with it. I'm totally ignorant to LinkedIn. But full disclosure, I've been sort of thinking about it. Like, what would that look like for me
Hmm.
as someone who's B2B? Um, and I think that would be the best use of it if you had some sort of B2B business, right? You
Yeah, for
wouldn't
sure.
really do it if it was direct to consumer necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I wouldn't say like direct to consumers is popular on LinkedIn. I could see it kind of still being like a space for it, maybe even more on that kind of like um so one thing that LinkedIn is like they're moving in the direction of, and like what's becoming more and more popular is like kind of like more like editorial style content. So like more storytelling, like newsletter style. They have like a newsletter feature now. Um so I think that like if regardless of your company, if you kind of have like stories or like advice or like experiences to share, uh or even just like kind of they want to have like kind of conversation starters on the platform. So like content that also performs really well is like kind of starting a conversation, prompting people, engaging with them. So pretty like standard social media kind of approach, but could see it actually being a bit industry. I would be curious to see it being a bit more industry agnostic. Like it's only a B2B platform because I don't think it has to be. Like even though like I think with business to business, like it's still human to human. Like it doesn't mean that like it's like robots, marketing to robots. We're not at that level yet, completely. So whoever's on the platform, like that is they're people, and like they have like they don't just like only defined by their job or their career. So I could see that kind of applying on the B2C side. I'd be curious actually to hear from anyone who's like tried it out and it's been working well for them. But yeah, I think definitely what we see is like for our clients, like performing well is kind of the things I've touched on, like really like kind of on that like educational conversation starting content. It's not overly like promotional. Like some of that performs well. I think if you're really looking to like convert people or to sell something, it may happen organically on the feed, but really like that's where you maybe want to invest in like considering some like advertising. But very much where, as I mentioned, what works well on LinkedIn and what to consider like building out kind of your strategy and the content is like really like sharing stories, like kind of, especially if you're an entrepreneur, like people like to hear the entrepreneurial journey, like what's working for you, kind of like productivity tactics or, stories of success, like stories about maybe like client wins. Like we do things like that too. It's also a really awesome platform. Like if you're building your business and like you want to show that kind of like culture side of your company or your team and help like LinkedIn started as like a job platform, like helping people find and connect with companies and get jobs. So I think that's still a little bit at its core, and can like lend itself if you're kind of looking for ways maybe outside of Instagram to connect with like a wider talent pool. Definitely like incorporating that into like LinkedIn posting, kind of sharing a little bit behind the scenes works really well too. That type of content.
I think that's so interesting because, like, everything that you said is applicable to any other platform, basically.
Yeah, for sure, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. I mean, I think in a way, like they all kind of are pretty similar. Obviously, like LinkedIn, I mean, LinkedIn's interesting because you can kind of test out different formats of like just like long form written, or you could do like images and video. We honestly see like all of it, like some of it working. It kind of just is dependent. I think it's really more of like not always like the exact like format, but like the quality. It's like, is this going to be interesting to someone? Is it going to be entertaining? Is it going to be educational? And then like using that as the guide of what to share. I think also, I mean, I'm like, you'll probably go check out my LinkedIn. I'm like the worst. I feel like I spend so much time on like the client side posting that then it comes to our own, like for myself, I'm like, oh, it feels like a lot of work.
Yeah.
um,
That's so
but
interesting because, like, it feels like a scary platform to me a little bit just because I'm not in the corporate world. But, I'm thinking about all the things that I post everywhere and,
you could
maybe
just
a
start
little
with
bit more.
reposting it. Yeah,
Yeah.
like if you already have a bunch of stuff that like it actually is kind of fun to do that, like to test out. We did that with like
Yeah.
we have like we created like a YouTube short series called Marketing in a Minute for Aimtal. And then we like repurpose that content on Reels and TikTok to see like out of the three which one it would like perform the best. And I like doing that with like tweets or like even Instagram posts, seeing like which one, like which posts perform on which channel. So it's kind of fun to even just like start there to be able to like compare your audiences or what's performing better on one channel versus another. And then that gives you like the direction for your strategy to be like, okay, where do we want to kind of like customize certain content, which where does it perform better, and just like then focus on that instead of just trying to do everything on every channel.
Yeah, I think that's totally something that I talk about a lot too, this
Mhm.
repurposing thing. I mean, not only do you get like good data from that, you also reach more people and it's less work, right? Like
Exactly. Work smarter,
like
not harder.
let's put some stuff on all the platforms. Like we're really trying to develop that system. I mean, I'm someone who has shiny object syndrome. Maybe shiny
Mhm.
object system also.
Maybe, yeah, maybe you could turn it into I love that.
But also, like what was I saying? Just like trying different pieces in different places and like seeing how that works and like also revisiting some of our stuff on Pinterest too because Pinterest is again another one of those sort of foreign
Oh, cool,
platforms to
yeah.
me, but I know also it has longevity and some of these pieces that we already have like our podcast videos for instance, like throw them up there, put them on TikTok, put them on all the things, send them in your YouTube, send them in your newsletter. Like, let's make things simple for ourselves. And like, I always have new ideas. I want to do new things, but like, okay, maybe we back it up a little bit and like talk about some things we've already talked about in a different way. I know
Mhm.
there's this person on TikTok, I forget his name, but he has like the method of like some three method. I don't know what the title is, but I've been thinking about that lately, and by lately I mean like literally this week. Um, how can I make each piece of content three different ways? And I think
Mhm.
that is really interesting. For instance, I posted a sort of longer form thing about like the Adobe conference, and it actually didn't do as well as I thought it would. And I was like, okay, well, how can I make this like half the length? How can I make this same piece of content because I know there's value there. I know that there's good clips there. Can I turn it into like lessons learned? Can I turn it into like a 15-second thing? Something with a trending sound? How can I take that exact same piece of content and like change it up to create that impact? And then to furthermore, like test all of those pieces on the different platforms too. And, like, I know that's a
Exactly.
lot of content to work with too and can be, like, a little bit chaotic. So, like, use a tool to, like, figure out when you're going to post all of that stuff on different
Yeah.
platforms.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, scheduling. Yeah, definitely scheduling platforms is the way to go for social. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Because like the other thing too is like just because you shared it once, like doesn't mean you can't kind of. That's what's nice about repurposing and having like kind of different formats too, because then you can share it again later. Like just because you put it out once, especially if it's only organic, like there's no guarantee someone's gonna see that. So I couldn't agree more with your approach, and I'm excited to see what comes from it. I think that's like one thing is just to kind of like layer into like the process or the system is like taking the time. Like we do like bi-weekly to like monthly of like looking at the analytics, like not to like I try not to obsess about it too much, like going in and seeing because it's just like gonna drive you crazy. But just kind of have that in like kind of like your routines of like content creation and like analytics and see like okay, like let's look at this, see what performed, what didn't, and try to like I think sometimes as much as possible like remove your ego from it. Like kind of what you were saying, you're like I thought this was gonna perform well, but then you're like actually maybe if I try it this way or that way that will perform a bit like better or like a different timing and stuff. But I tried I think my advice on that would be like don't drive yourself crazy on it either because if you get so in the numbers and the data I think that like you can easily lose sight of like who you're creating the content for, and that's at the end of the day what matters is like your audience and like who it's for. And if it it can always be like a one-to-one tracking on it, but it will resonate with someone, and that's what I get excited about personally.
I would love if you had any like exercises or tips or just like, I don't know, how do you figure out who your audience is? How do you like really zero in on that and figure out who you're talking to? And that can apply for your all of the platforms and your whole business, right?
Yeah, for sure. For I would say, I mean, to be honest, like to start, like if you already have maybe like customers, I would say I'll speak first into the context of you already like have maybe kind of an idea or like one to two customers. Like if you've started a business, then you kind of have someone in mind of like who that customer is. So really like to be honest, a lot of the time I just like sit there and try to like very much like think of like what is like their experience, like what like you can use honestly I think if you just like google it, we don't have one like Aimtal specific, but it's just called like an empathy map, where it's like you kind of thinking through like the who, what, where, when, why of like the persona, and you're not just only thinking of like like their job or like specifically what you're selling them. It's like kind of even thinking like does this person have children, like where do they live in a city or a suburb, like kind of thinking of like almost someone's like day. Like I like to almost be like if this person like had a day, like how am I envisioning it, and like kind of getting into your creativity there. I like to kind of start of like more of that like ideation, like dreaming, brainstorming of that kind of like empathetic approach to just like think of like their worldview and experience. And then from there, like layer in the data. There's another framework called jobs to be done. So it's like kind of like thinking in the context of that person's like day to day in terms, and that applies well for B2B, but I think it applies to everything of like what is like the job that they need to complete at work, like what are their goals, like how is like whatever we create and market to them something that like help them achieve that. So I think it's kind of that like qualitative, that's where I like to start, is like that kind of like qualitative ideation and like thinking. Um and then if you kind of find that person online, I think if you follow people, it's like take a to be honest, although this is a little bit of like if you're not feeling like you're stalking someone or like kind of like looking into stuff, then you're not probably going about the research in the right ways. It's not I mean just go on,
Stalk your
obviously only
customer
do yeah,
safely
only
and
do things that
kindly
are
with
publicly
respect.
available. Yeah, I don't agree, don't do anything that would be illegal, of course. But I think that's what's cool is actually we have like access to a lot of this on like people sharing on social, kind of like their day to day, even like on LinkedIn, what are they posting about? What are they like sharing or reposting? And trying to kind of like get into that mindset. And then yeah, I think from there you can of course like kind of like layer in that like the like quantitative data. If you have like I mentioned like that tool called Spark Tour, you could start to try to use. Also, like if you have Google Analytics on your site, on your website, if you have a company website or like a product page, just kind of taking a look to see like what's the traffic coming in, what's that demographic data. um, But yeah, I don't know if it's like a hard and fast like rule to it. I think I always just kind of pull in a bunch of like kind of different things. Really like to think through like what someone's kind of like goals, motivations, pain points, and challenges, and then like how we can solve for that. And then trying as much to kind of see if the data aligns with that or showing something different than what we were kind of thinking it could be or that person is. The only other thing I would say is if you have customers like already, like that's the perfect place to start. It's like, what's the profile of that person? Ask them directly if you have that relationship. Like, I think we kind of get scared to like, I get scared sometimes to like ask my customer, like, well, what do you want? Is this working for you? Is it not? Like, what would you improve? Like, what would be better service, like a better product? So I think even kind of figuring out, like, just trying, if you have that relationship with someone like a customer or your audience, like just kind of polling or asking them directly, you can, that's your research and data point right there.
I love that. Okay, kind of switching gears a little bit, going back to when you guys decided to start the agency and when you decided to start growing your team. Can you talk a little bit about how you knew you were ready to hire, and sort of what does that expanding of a team look like?
Yeah. Oh man, how long do we have? No. I think it was like really a lot because we're an agency, so it was like the quality of our work and like the need definitely was the accelerator of having to like build a team and like bring folks in. So as I mentioned, we started off with like um people in my network that I had worked with before or like kind of wanted to work with as like contractors. And then kind of like for a couple years they were doing contracting with us. We just didn't have like the infrastructure or like the capital like with Aimtal, my co-founder and I, like we completely bootstrapped the agency. Like we never got investment, we never have anything that we ever like profit wise just invested back in the business, especially to hire because we're an agency. Like you need the people to like, especially on the client side, and then like creating the marketing and all of that. So that was primarily the main catalyst of like just the demand of the services, which is a great problem to have, honestly. And then yeah, it led into since we were fully remote too, it that led us to be able to kind of hire wherever in the United States. So we weren't beholden to just being in Boston, only having to like work with people in this geographical location. So that kind of opened up like our eyes to like the opportunity of being able to kind of identify the best talent or just have that flexibility in hiring. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think in terms of building a team, I feel like at the end of like at the core of it, I always just kind of wanted to like we wanted to build an age like a company that like we never like could find, honestly. Like I think that's what a lot of people in biz like an entrepreneur does. Like I just couldn't find it. Like it didn't exist or didn't match what I wanted to be. So that's kind of always been the vision is like building the business and the agency and the culture and the team into like what I always kind of like where I always wanted to work and like who I like and the people I always wanted to work for. So that was kind of like the I feel like in reflection, some of it has been intentional of like how like to kind of structure the team, like, and it definitely lends itself to like the services we provide. So we have like an entire creative team. We now have like a full growth marketing team within that. Like, but before that, we had like content, um, demand gen separate. Now it's like all in one, but like kind of very much in like terms of like our specialty areas of services and the people that I was hiring, that's how the team started to kind of like evolve of like who we would have who was kind of like managers and then growing out those teams. And like now we also have like a strategy team, project management, like under like account management. So it definitely has been like a driver of like kind of the needs from the clients and like the direction of the services, if that makes sense. I feel like there's another question you asked in there that I missed. uh
Um, I don't remember, but I would love to talk to you about like building team culture because that was my
hmm
next question anyways, but you touched on it too, like building something that didn't exist. And
hmm
I really identify because I don't come from any sort of 9 to 5. Like I never sort of
yeah.
had I was in restaurants and teaching yoga. So it's been really interesting to build a team from scratch, and it's a really interesting, and I'll just talk to my own space, my own experience quickly. like it's an opportunity to be uh you know, anti-patriarchal,
Mhm.
anti-racist, all of these things, like really hold space for a team and like hold space for trust and like also friendships and like have all these like nuanced relationships that maybe doesn't exist in corporate America or doesn't exist on a big team or I don't know. So I would love to sort of hear like maybe a little bit more of the esoteric, like how do those relationships, like how are you developing those team relationships and also like you had to start somewhere. Like what did that
Mhm.
look like? How did you sort of like build that the culture from scratch? Like what sort of tools did you use? And I know that's a huge question, but
Yeah,
maybe you can
no,
speak to it a little
I mean, I
bit.
can definitely answer it. I would say, like, one thing that I think that we did really well from the beginning is that my co-founder and I, we determined and established core values from the beginning. And we've actually added on, like, 2 over the years. So we started out with 5, and then we added, like, on 2 more. So, like, I can mention what they are. So like the number one and like also like kind of our team culture is like we're a fully remote company. So everything always had to be thought through with this like remote first mindset. So I s- we put time into really think of like our core values. It wasn't like from the very beginning, but like within like growing a team and realizing like I realized pretty quickly like this is pretty much like our common language. Like people are from different perspectives and actually like speak different languages or just have different worldviews, but like this becomes like our shared language of like how we like work together, our expectations of working, communication, and collaboration with each other fully remote. So like the one that we have is I kind of think of them as like two pillars of like excellence and empathy, and that's kind of what we want to be known for as Aimtel is like high quality, excellent services and work, and like a very empathetic approach to each other and like our clients. So like the ones that we like the 5 we started with were communicate clearly is like a big one. I also have a communication degree, so communication is like super important to me. I think within that is like setting clear like intention and expectations of people, and that's something like I'm proud of. I really put a lot of effort to like communicate expectations of like this is what I'm expecting of you and trying to make sure that people are like clear about that. I think everyone kind of wants to know where they stand and like where they're going. Um, and then and just like we're fully remote. So it's like I can't turn around to someone and say like, hey, send me that thing or we're gonna work on this or what do you think? It all has to be very intentional, of the communication. And then the second one is understand the customers. Like that's like kind of like really thinking of like the other person of like what you're doing, like their like what we just talked about, like their worldview, their experiences. We're a small company, so the third one's like take the initiative. Like very much like we need people to like kind of take ownership and take initiative, like tackle challenges like head on together. It can't just be like, oh, I'm telling you kind of every single step along the way. um the other one was keep an open mind. So kind of we like to celebrate and like respect diversity of like ideas and thought as and kind of be you may have something like a strong opinion, but like someone could challenge that, and being open to that I think is actually like a great thing and an important part of like team culture. And then the other one was be exceptional. So those were like our ones that have always had at our core from the beginning. um and really like kind of like that, like the be exceptional is like that passion. Really want people with like passion for marketing or like their craft that they have in like kind of their specialty area. And the ones that we've added on over the past 2 years, is like find a solution. So really like coming like, I mean, working in an agency and working at any company is challenging, and like you're always gonna have challenges to solve. So really kind of like have that core value has been kind of a game changer to like layer in as find a solution is like you may not have to know exactly what the solution is, but like showing that you've thought through things. And then the final one is like collaborating with intention. So very much like making sure that like those who should be included in decision making or discussion like are involved, and like inviting them to the meeting, making sure that they're like in the Slack channel, that they're like participating and like their perspectives being heard. So that's kind of, I would say, like definitely starting with team culture like comes from like if you have is those core values. Like I've worked at companies where like previous company, like it's just like kind of plastered on the wall or the employee handbook, but how we kind of make sure that this is like part of like our routines and rituals is like we actually have like I'll go in a little bit of like the routine, like kind of like the structure of how we make sure this happens. Because I find a lot of the time, like team culture you want it to happen really organically, but I've found in my experience you have to be pretty like intent, like you really kind of have to like set up a like structure for it to like operate. Like some stuff will happen organically. I think that that's like you have to allow that, but I don't think it's going to happen as much as people think it will. Like you really got to like put in the effort to make sure that people show up in the ways that they're expected to. So for example, at Aimtal we do like a all hands meetings, like Zoom calls, every Monday, Friday, and Monday's kind of like a look ahead of the week. We're all kind of like getting on together, looking across like projects and priorities. We also like kind of take a look at like our workloads and see like kind of, if anyone needs to like kind of reprioritize or get some support at certain days, and talk about that openly. And then on Fridays we treat it as like kind of like a wrap up, like all hands, like a reflection of the week. And we start every single call giving each other like kudos, like high five, like call it kudos. And every kudo, like every kind of like reflection or something you want to say to your team member about something they did that work, or like celebrate. It's like our moment to celebrate every week, because we're just like constantly moving forward, looking ahead. So it's really nice to just pause, and every like time you give a kudo to someone, it needs to be connected to like a core value. So you're like, hey, like I saw that you took the initiative in this way, or you communicated clearly, we collaborate with intention in these ways. And that's like really that's probably one of my favorite things of like just taking those moments to reflect. We use a tool, we've used it for a couple years and still using it, called 15.5. So they have like this like kudos feed. So you can just like add your kudos to like the feed and then associate it to the core value. And it's kind of cool because then like when you like hashtag the value, and then it actually it starts to, it calculates like what the top trending like values every month are. So that's kind of a fun way for everyone to like see like,
Kind of
oh,
love
like yeah, it's like
that.
really like fun little data point, kind of back to the data, but like to see like, oh, and like okay, like find a solution as the top one, so everyone's kind of like operating within that. And because there's 7 of them, so there's kind of like a lot. But um and then we do like a every quarter we do like a quarterly review across like the agency and department. So we kind of like look at this like holistically, like what were the top trending like values, and like what are some examples, ask people to like share more examples of that. So I think like starting there in like reflection of 5 years, and like that's stuff that's like really easy to put off and like not put the work into. But if you're building a team and your plan is to build a team, like that common language and like setting those expectations and like really figuring out how it's like part of like your daily, weekly, like working with everyone is really important, because it's easy to kind of just like forget, and then you're like, oh, a month has gone by, we haven't talked about this, or 3 months have gone by, a year has gone by. So anyway, you can kind of, yeah, I have other examples of course too, but I think I'll pause there, because I know that's kind of a lot to take in potentially. But yeah.
No, I like that. Um, okay, what does your day-to-day look like? And how do you, and like, I guess, how do you, take care of yourself while running a business? And maybe
Oh,
those are two
you're gonna
questions,
ask
but
ask the hard questions now. I feel like I'll just I can give the classic answer of like every day is different. I mean, I would say like what I try to do, like I can kind of explain like my morning, like my full routine. I definitely like, I'm still overseeing like the client services, like marketing of like the team, like delivering services to the client. Like I'm still client facing. I do actually enjoy the work, like I'm a marketer at heart, so it's like what I like to do. But of course at the same time, like I have a team that is also client facing and in a lot of meetings and like leading the charge on a bunch of accounts. So there's certain ones that I'm still involved in. So some of my meetings are like, client facing, external. um and then but also a lot of like on the internal side, like helping like run the business, doing our own marketing, like things like this. And then also like coaching my team and helping them problem solve, and kind of working with them in our projects and accounts. So majority, I would say, like, I mean, kind of typical unfortunately is like I am in a lot of meetings for a majority of my day, but like to kind of take care of myself and like balance things, I very much like pretty much make sure I don't have any meetings unless it's like absolutely necessary before 10 a.m. Like I really like to have a slow morning. I'm not a morning person. I like don't talk to me. Like I'll talk by like I like to talk a lot obviously, but I need to have like a kind of slow chill morning. I like to, you know, I like to kind of sleep. I don't have children yet, so I have the luxury of being able to sleep in a bit. So when I can, I do. Either like, well, sometimes I like to work out in the morning, like go for a walk with my husband, or I like to like cycle. We have like a bike at home. Um, I'm not the best with exercise. I will be honest. I'm like I ebb and flow a lot, but I always feel better when I wake up and move. So I try that as much as possible, especially if I have like can have a slow morning. Um, and then yeah, I start to kind of get into when I get into work mode, like between 9 and 10, it's more of just like getting organized. So like seeing the lay of the land, like what do I have for meetings or like things I gotta work on. I still honestly like write down. I have like a digital to-do list, like we have our like project management digital to-do list, but I like to like look at it and then like physically write down. I think everyone can identify with the satisfaction of crossing things physically off a list. um, I like to write down like top three priorities for the day because like I have a lot, and I think any entrepreneur, like you're kind of like take one hat, put the next one on. Like every hour is like a different, like a lot of context switching. So for me, like just looking at like the full list and then being like, okay, what are the top three things I like n- will get done today to feel productive and accomplished and successful? I like write those down at the top of my like page. And then I I've learned, and one thing I've like put a lot of like time and energy into is like my own kind of like personal development, like productivity styles and like trying different ones. And the one that I've found that's like worked the best for me is like time blocking and like task batching. So looking at my calendar and being like, do I have gaps of time blocks that I can like fill in with kind of similar things I got to accomplish, like in between meetings or things like that. That's worked really well for me. So I kind of map out my day based on kind of like almost every hour, to be honest, or even half hour sometimes. And not forgetting, I literally like today I was like, eat lunch. Like sometimes it gets to the point where I like have to be like, I gotta like make sure I write it down. But I don't think that's a problem. I think that's actually like, because I'll forget, unfortunately. I'm one of those people that's like, oh, 3 o'clock and I forgot to eat lunch, unfortunately, which is not I don't recommend it. But I found kind of a system there to like make sure that I'm like just kind of staying on track. And then like at the kind of at like the end of the day, I guess. But that's what I like about working remotely is like sometimes I just don't have like the kind of oomph or the energy. So like I'll like sometimes in the middle of the day like go out for a walk, or if it's nice out, or just get some air, just like sometimes even just like do things around my apartment and around my home just to like kind of like move, kind of change up my energy a little bit to like bring it back. And that's what I actually enjoy because it doesn't always have to be like always on sitting at my desk from 9 to 5. That was kind of not the point. And then yeah, I think at night I just try to um it can depend, of course. Like if I have events, I like to go out like with friends or my husband, family, like dinners. I like to go to like networking event now that we can like do events in person. I like to kind of like get out and I live in downtown Boston, so go out for a walk, kind of see what's happening in the city. Or just kind of chilling out, honestly. Like sometimes I'm just my face mask on and hang out, make a good dinner.
I love it. Okay, we are gonna go onto our lightning round. I
Okay.
think we've talked about a couple things right now already. But what is your favorite app right now?
Okay, I was thinking about this. I'm like, Instagram? No. Like, no. Actually, I feel like would not be like a common one, but I, I mean, I think everyone has access to. Maybe not everyone. If you have an iPhone, you should have access to part of it. But we recently got I just like the subscription to like Apple News Plus, and I've been really enjoying that actually because it's like just a really like and you can like subscribe. I can subscribe to like articles or like magazines that I like to read on there. So I've been enjoying Apple News, which I spread that question and I was like, I feel like that's not going to be like that interesting, but at the same time it kind of is. Like I feel
That's
like
great.
I'm one like I need to like I want to stay informed, so it's a nice way to feel like I have like a one place to go and like stay informed of what's just happening outside of my world.
Absolutely. Um, what is your favorite thing on the internet?
Ooh, favorite thing on the internet. I didn't think. Good
Maybe
question.
like today. It doesn't have to be for
Today,
always.
yeah. um, I'm like so terrible because I feel like I'm a classic marketer where like the moment I can get off the internet, I try to.
Yeah,
um, no, I don't know if this is like I guess on the internet, but like what and like I feel like it's like kind of it's like it's not really I guess on the internet, but like something I've really enjoyed, and I feel like I'm in this mode of like because I'm switching from since we're here in I'm in New England too. It's like switching from summer clothes to winter, and like I you know there's obviously the clothes I don't want to be wearing, and I guess it's kind of on the internet. It's like a company called 4 Days, FORDAYS, and I really like their site and like their kind of like whole approach. They send you like a bag, like a physical bag to like for your clothing so you can recycle it, so it's like all sustainable too, so you can like recycle your clothing and then you can go back online and they give you like a credit based on that to like do online shopping. So I guess that's an internet thing because I like online shopping in some ways. Um, so that's I guess I would go with that one because I feel like I was looking at the bag and then like I had to do all that switch up.
perfect. Is there a book that you love lately?
uh yeah, I think I started reading a book actually. And I like just started it, so I'll let you know if I love it, but I love the title. And it's called Surrounded by Idiots. And it's actually like a book. It's called like The Four Types of Human Behavior and How to Effectively Communicate. And I find that's really interesting because I think a lot of the time, like it's been interesting so far and just learning more about like people's communication styles and like differences. So I'm kind of looking forward to reading this book I just started because I think it's a lot of things that in life are just a matter of like great communication or miscommunication. So anyway, I can like kind of learn new tactics I get excited about.
And let's see. Let's close it out with what is something like you wish you knew when you were starting out with your agency?
I would say I think the biggest one is like very much on I think kind of to kind of wrap up our conversation today is like around like setting and communicating clear expectations. I think that's really important. Like I said, like people want to know like kind of where they are, like where they can go, and like if you're building a team or a company, like that's kind of stuff that like it evolves to that, which I didn't fully realize. I guess like I enjoy it, but it's like one of those things that like you kind of go into your company if you're as an entrepreneur because like you're really great at what you're like delivering to the customer, but as you start to like build a team and like a culture and like kind of all the other stuff, you kind of have to you got to think through of like people are starting to think of their own careers and like career paths. So I think kind of for anyone would be like maybe starting out would be like maybe wanting to be more of like proactive of really starting to identify that and build that part. I think actually we've done a pretty good job, but it's a lot of work. I think it's kind of goes back to like identify for yourself as the business owner of like is that something that you really want to be doing? Like what do you really like to be doing and want to kind of invest your time and energy in, or like do you hire someone to like help with those things? Because I think we wear so many hats, but it doesn't mean that you should be wearing every single hat. Um, so I think kind of that really like really honest like reflection of like what's a good like way I like to like frame the question is like what's de-energizing or energizing. Like you can probably do it, but is it what you should be doing? And I think yeah, what we talked about too is just like putting in the work to set like that kind of common language with your team if you're building one or just starting, and like what's our mission, what's our core values, um, and just kind of having that be part of discussion and conversation. Honestly, if you feel like if you're repeating things all the time, then that's probably a good thing. Like back to your thing of three, it's like if you haven't said it in like three times in three different ways, then the message probably didn't land. So like make sure I always like say to my managers, I'm like, did you say it in three different ways? Like written, verbal, um, or like a video recording or something like that. It could be in a range of formats. But yeah, I think just like very much of kind of thinking through as much as you can of like how do you want to show up in your business, and like what do you need to build, and build that infrastructure for everyone to be able to help you achieve the goals and support your customers.
I love the three times or three ways thing, and I think that applies to so much. And I think you can take that to social media and say, actually, you have to say it 7 times.
Oh, for sure.
Like,
Yeah,
just repeat
totally.
yourself, and it's
Totally.
okay, and it's allowed, and
Yeah. I feel like
um,
it makes you feel like you're doing something wrong, but it's actually
yeah,
like you're doing it right if you're kind of that repetition.
yeah.
So yeah.
I love that. Okay, well, Janet, this has been so great. Where can listeners find you?
You can find us on our website, aimtal.com, aimtal.com. Definitely, I would say, like, yeah, just follow us on social. If you're, we're definitely the most active, I would say, on Instagram and LinkedIn. And yeah, we also are just like launching an email newsletter. So it's called Marketing in a Minute. So if you wanted to kind of get like a 1 minute marketing lesson and just kind of stay kind of in contact with some of the content we're creating, you can definitely go to our website and go to our newsletter section and sign up there too.
Oh, that's great. We'll definitely make sure that you give us that link, and we'll definitely share
Yeah,
that.
sounds good.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much, Janet. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.